Welcome to Alchemia's energetic forecast for March 2024. This is a very big month. My name is Melanie, and today I'm joined by my co-founder and oh so dear friend, Alana, and we're going to get right into all of the things. In these forecasts, we work with a few different modalities so that we can call in some concrete archetypes to work with, look at, and unpack so that we get a good, it's like a weather forecast for the month to come. Our primary ones that we often work with, as you will notice if you are a reoccurring subscriber or a watcher of these forecasts, would be the astrological placements that are going on for the month, as well as the gene keys, and we will also be pulling tarot cards for the month to kind of round out and finish off the forecast with any of that intuitive juice that Alana and I like to infuse into these. So we bring in and look at the tarot card that we pulled back in our 2024 year at a glance tarot spread. So that will be linked below as well if you want to get a more zoomed out forecast for the entire year and learn a little bit more about tarot within that kind of video structure as well if you would like. But today, hi Alana, we're going to unpack March and get into it. It's exciting.
Yeah, hi, I'm excited too. These are so fun to do because I feel like we get to really in this have a conversation and kind of connect all the dots between all those modalities that you spoke about. And it's magical for me as well.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to pull in the different modalities because they're different structures. So it feels like you're looking at the same diamond from different angles.
It's a good way of putting it.
I think overall, March is carrying, oh, side note, if you're watching this video on YouTube here and you're actually seeing Alana and I have my notes so that I have the dates written down properly in front of me. So if I'm glancing off into the distance, that is what is going on. I'm not distracted, I promise. But for March 2024, the overall dynamic that's going on is very transformative, and I feel like people are going to get really sick of astrologers saying that in the year of 2024. But this year is a big one. It's a culminating year. We've got a lot of things going on. There's a lot of really significant astrological alignments and shifts that start to happen in the month of March that we're going to cover. Big theme would be both personal and collective evolution, and I'll even put into brackets there revolution, because those tend to go hand in hand. And I'm sure, as you can see in our political climate in the world at large, we're walking that fine line right now. With transformation comes the death and rebirth cycle. So more of that is coming here in March as well as embracing the frequency behind embracing change and aligning ourselves with our higher truth. Yeah, that's my overall take of what's going on. We can obviously look at the fact that we're moving from Pisces into Aries season. There's a lot of very specific astrology stuff that we'll get into, but overall, March seems to be a very big one. I'm not sure if you're picking up on that as well, Alana, but...
Oh my goodness, yeah. No, I think I've been trying to avoid that feeling of like, oh yeah, this is going to be big. But yeah, I'm excited to dive in and go a little deeper here.
Yeah, we can start with the astrology because I feel like it gives us dates and like a pretty clear structure of when these transitions and stuff might be occurring. Of course, with astrology and when we're looking at the energies that are going on with these placements, I want to frame this for people how I look at it. Just give you guys an option of viewing it similarly. Astrology and the planets in the sky they're not doing this to you. It's not that the planets up there are creating these vibrations or these frequencies in and of themselves, and then the people here on planet Earth are subject to them. It's a lot more like the planets are mirroring the energetic flow that's happening here on Earth and within our lives, and then within our collective as well. So it's a little bit of a pivot in the way you view it. You hear this phrasing in this conversation a lot around things like Mercury retrograde. Like, oh, Mercury retrograde made me do it. Or if Mercury wasn't retrograde, all of this would work out. But within Alchemia and the way we tend to interact with a lot of these energetic modalities, it's an interesting pivot to look at it like a relationship between you two. It's mirroring. And when you're in any relationship, it's mirroring your internal dynamics your external dynamics, and there's a feedback that's going on. It's not that the planets are doing this to you. So I hope that that can give you a little bit more power or empowerment when you are seeing some of these very tumultuous or big dynamics. It's that you always have that choice about how you want to show up and partake in that energetic meshing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that. I love the way you say that, because it's like, it's kind of a tool you can use, a way to kind of a framework to look at something with, to have some understanding, to prepare and be able to show up and utilize these energies that can be, helpful to us in our personal evolution. Because it's like, as much as I could be like, oh, evolve, evolution, revolution, that's intense. It's like, ultimately, most of my being is like, yes, absolutely, that's what I want. It's also exciting. And, but I think a good thing also to keep in mind when you're looking at any kind of intuitive projection as well would be that, take what resonates with you and discard the rest. You don't need to like both you and I are also looking at things through our lens and interpreting through our body and our being. And so like, it's not always meant for everybody, but the things that are meant for you, those are the places to lean into.
Exactly. And that's why we call these things forecasts. It's like getting told that it's going to rain on Tuesday. You don't cancel your whole trip. You just bring an umbrella and gumboots and you suit up accordingly, right? So having that perspective when we're looking at these forecasts or any kind of tarot, divination, energetic insights that we might be gaining and communing, it's really, don't allow this to dictate your entire life. Just take it under advisement when you're moving forward. So if we want to do a bit of a recap, a bit of a calibration, like where we're starting at when we're moving into March, is we still have a lot of that Aquarius energy going on. Of course, we had some heavy hitters move into Aquarius. You can see like Pluto, the death and rebirth planet. We talked about that a lot in the previous forecast. Venus and Mars are still in Aquarius for the first portion of March. And we will be then moving out of Aquarius into Pisces. So you will see a lot of the slower moving planets begin to transition into Pisces out of Aquarius about halfway through March. So the first portion of March, we're still working with a lot of those humanitarian, justice, society, community, our immediate friend groups, people we work with directly. That kind of circle of friends is still having a lot of focus energetically. And then we will be moving, a lot of those planets will be moving into Pisces. And this is what happens when a bunch of planets meet up in the sky, right? So now we're moving from this one area, which was in Aquarius, and now we're all moving into Pisces together. So we're going to be having those really big revolutionary experiences until the planets start to space themselves out. So like specific areas of our lives are going to be definitely like under tumultuous, the microscope, right? Like these are big things, big themes, both in our personal lives and on the collective. And I think that's what is causing such deep evolution and such deep revolution, because it is such a focus, right? It's not just like, oh, one planet's here or one planet's there. It's like, no, and everybody's experiencing at the same time in different areas of their lives, but this energy is hitting all of us. And there's like 3 planets or 4 planets. There's a lot of different things focusing on specific areas of our lives. So that lends to a lot of the intensity that we're experiencing. And on top of that, so a big overarching theme here, and we can see it with the Hermit tarot card that we pulled as well. Mars and Venus do end up squaring Uranus. This is still a Uranus heavy month. There's still a lot of those, like I said, big, slower moving planets that are in relationship and coming within aspects of the smaller, quicker moving, more personal planets like Mars and Venus. So there's a square that happens between Mars and Venus, between Mars and Uranus, and then Venus and Uranus. And that really pulls us to, especially the Venus and Mars, because those are the masculine, feminine polarity within ourselves and within the 3D represented in the sky, right? So that really pulls us back into ourselves and back into that kind of dichotomy and that calling back into that alignment of the soul where that polarity doesn't exist. So I can see a lot of energy being around aligning to your higher self, and being connected to your soul is very different than being selfish, right? So we're talking about that internal I-centered self-guidance, and that does not necessarily mean that you're only concerned with yourself, but that is a big dynamic that's going on with Mars and Venus both squaring Uranus, and having that internalized energy. Like, this isn't about finding other people's information and finding other people's insights and getting your next guru or starting your next 10-step course or plan because this person says this. This is really about connecting to your soul, connecting to your internal guidance system. And that's a big theme in March for many different reasons, but one of the main ones being Uranus, as well as we see it in the Hermit card and that calling in, and even you could word it as finding a way to connect with God, right? Connect with source.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's when you put it like that too, like just it's like kind of the big all or nothing energies, like you said, being faced in everybody's which way and all personal planets. So that's yeah, it seems like a very powerful time. It's not very common that we hear of all the planets, like you said, being grouped together like this. And yeah, wow.
Yeah, and it adds yeah, like a deepness to it, right? It's like you're not just scratching the surface of, oh, maybe I want to change some things in my life. It's like, nope, you're going to want to change everything in your life, or reevaluate at least, if not change, which I think is half the battle. Just being willing to show up and be aware of those areas of our lives and ask those questions, you're already doing it. That's already work. It's not about, oh, I need to actually change everything in my life. If that is truly what's calling you, all the power to you, but also don't feel pressured to have to show up that way. Just reevaluating and figuring out where you align in regards to those aspects of yourself, right? This is about trusting that self-guidance with the Uranus energy in March, your own impetus, like your own direction, your own inner voice, your own intuition. What is right for you? What is your purpose? What is your calling here? And align with that. And in order to align with that, if you've been living an inauthentic life or a convoluted life, there might be some big upheaval when you start to align with your soul calling or your true self, or however you'd like to word that.
Yeah, wow. I definitely feel this kind of energy even now starting to bubble up in my life too. I just feel like there's been a lot of old patterns. It feels like kind of coming to an end, coming to that death, coming to that rebirth. But with that comes like, yeah, really having to step up and make really like empowered choices. And they're very self-led as far as like things that I've been like, yeah, maybe scratching the surface more in the past. And now like feels more like, okay, I have some traction. We're going deep. We're actually going to like uproot these things and find new ways forward.
Yeah, totally. The other thing too, which is great and also a little daunting, and I'll try not to infuse my own trepidation into this conversation, but it's eclipse season again. It rolls around all the time. It really does. And eclipses are very big, tumultuous, life-altering, energetic, focused change, right? And it's from the roots up. It's like getting planted in an entirely different garden. And it happens about every like 6 months ish. So this is something that, whether you're aware of it or not, like these are larger patterns that you are subjected to rather frequently. Doesn't necessarily make it easier though. So this eclipse season is in Libra on March 25th. It's full moon lunar eclipse in Libra. These, if you look at the Libra associations, right? So this eclipse is talking about our inspiration, our insights, our ideas, like our internal thought processes, how we reason things out in the world. And another important note, this is a little bit more detail oriented, but it is a south node lunar eclipse. And basically what that means is when the nodes are involved in a broad theme here, it's very fated, right? Like your north node is the direction you're moving in your life, right? And depending on your beliefs and what you believe in free will and how much free will you get, it tends to be tied into fate when you're working with your nodes, your north and your south. The south node are things like you're leaving behind, right? So like it's just the general stuff you're letting go. North node is what you're moving towards too. That's a very general overview. You can get a lot more detailed with it, but that's all you need to know for this conversation. So it's very fatey in flavor, right? And that ties in again with the Uranus. Like you're really aligning to reevaluating and getting that cognitive, imaginative air sign energy of the Libra archetype involved with aligning to your fate. And in order to do that, I love that you called it forward intuitively already. You have to leave a lot of stuff behind because this is a south node eclipse. So what's happening is a lot of the time the eclipses will bring something in, and you like manifestation or new opportunities, etc. Or an eclipse will be more of release work, more of letting things die and letting things go. And this definitely has a big flavor in that area because it's closely related to the South Node. So it's about releasing things that hold you back from your ideals or your imaginative pursuits or all that things could be. You have to let go of the limiting beliefs. And I think that's really what is being called into light with this eclipse.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we just coming out of February here as well, we just had Pluto, which also has a lot to do with death and rebirth and letting go, and so that has had crossed and had interactions with all of our personal planets over this time here in February. So it's just kind of almost more of that same kind of energy, just continuing forward as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure. If you're listening to this and you're wanting to apply this to your life and see how this works for you, you're going to want to see where the moon is in your chart when this eclipse is occurring, right? So on or around March 25th. It could be March 24th, depending in like where you are in the planet. So get on Google and just figure out where the moon is in your chart, so what house it falls in, and that will be able to that will show you what area of your life that this sort of letting go and release of belief patterns is going to be occurring, so you can make it a lot more personal for you to have some actual practical support from this kind of overview forecast in your own chart. Really, there's like a lot of different aspects. Every month there's different aspects between the moon and all whatever, right? Lots of aspects going on. I think everything is pretty much overshadowed very bigly, very intensely by eclipse. And it definitely flavors everything. We have Venus and Mars about halfway through the month. So about halfway through the month in March, everything switches. So the beginning part of March, we are in Pisces season. And it changes on the 20th every month, 19th, 20th. But Pisces season, for the first part of March, we are hanging out in that 12th house energetics. So that's like flavoring everything. Some like more positive associations with Pisces, as I like to do both sides of the coin. So we'll cover the more shadowy ones as well. It is very imaginative. It's very sensitive, compassionate, kind, selfless, all is one love kind of vibe. Think about like we're all drops in the ocean. Pisces is the ocean. It's very communicative between other worlds as well. It's very otherworldly. It's very sympathetic, intuitive. And this really supports us aligning to ourselves, right? Like if you got that first part of March, you can really call in that Piscean energy because it's Pisces season. You can really call that in when you're trying to align to yourself, when you're working with Uranus and you're kind of getting clearer on that internal system. Pisces is really beautiful for that. There's also a lot of incredible mythos and lore around Pisces because it is the 12th zodiac sign. If we're working off the 12 sign system, of course, there's the 13 sign conversation we could have. But working off of the 12 sign system here, Pisces is the last sign in the zodiac. So there's a conversation to be had about the evolution of the self when you move through the zodiac. So in reality, Pisces is the container for all. That's one way to look at this. Like that's why Pisces can be really hard to kind of pin down, why some of their behavior can be really confusing or mysterious, because it's almost like they have access to all of these archetypes within themselves, and they can pull forward whatever tool, dynamic, or energetic they might be wanting to work with in that dynamic in that moment in their life. So Pisces is a very vast container and it's very fluid. Obviously, it is a water sign. It is mutable. So both of those qualities just add to like the most fluid of fluid. It's just so ethereal. I'm going to say fluid again.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's almost like when you look at, like you said, any journey, it's almost like you've journeyed back to the one, and the one is like, that kind of more omniscient kind of presence as well. And
for sure. The flip side of that coin, though, is because there's always a flip side, darling. with all archetypes, you've got escapist, idealistic, secretive, mysterious, vague. This is going to trigger some people, but very weak-willed. When you're in that collective, there's not a strong sense of I. right? Because it's, oh, well, we could do this. And it's easily led energy. It's not that like, oh, I'm channeling this in. It's very broad. It's very this or that or all of it or whatever, or maybe this, and weak-willed because they don't have a clear drive. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So all of the Piscean energy that's going on, not only with Pisces season, we have Mars, Venus, and a new moon in Pisces. So this is a big focus. And on top of Uranus and that connection is like, this is very like do a meditation and connect to the Akashic records vibe.
Love that.
And for those who like know what I mean by that, you're going to be like, oh, sweet. But it's very otherworldly, like the veil, the proverbial veil is thin. Like you can make connections to your higher self. This is the energy for it. Venus moves into Pisces and out of Aquarius on the 11th. Mars moves into Pisces on the 22nd. And we also have a new moon in Pisces on the 10th. So yeah, the beginning to the middle of the month, we notice a really big switch in energy. Not only do we have Mars and Venus moving, but it's the season switch, and you can see it's very contrasting, especially this time of year, because this is like the winter to the spring season. But that is such a noticeable energetic change because we're going from Pisces to Aries.
Yeah, that is a big shift in the energy for sure.
And if we continue on with the story, or I guess the evolution of Pisces, and like you just called forward, we go back from the whole to the first split and the eye, because Aries is the first planet. It's the first placement, rules over the head when we're looking at our body. It's the ram. It's very driven. It's very individualistic. It's very, so for Aries seasons, just all of the characteristics we could look at would be that energized, pioneering, creative, thriving, masculine, stereotypically masculine traits. That's the movement forward, right? As opposed to the cosmic void that is Pisces. So this is a big energetic shift. Like halfway through the month, we're like, oh, this isn't all wishy-washy anymore. There's literal fire. It's a fire sign, cardinal movement, literal fire under our butts. We've got that Martian energy. And it's definitely very primal. Like we really notice the switch between Pisces and Aries, and it's compounded by the clear switch of the seasons between winter and spring as well. There's that life, there's that vigor, there's the creation, the what are we doing, the outward motion effect.
And then we also got the switch into eclipse season as well. So there's an extra season switch too.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And the fact that Venus and Mars are moving signs in general, all of that will just be a basis. I mean, they're moving into Pisces, but still they're out of Aquarius, which is aloof, and into Pisces, which is emotionally driven, very connected, very tapped in, very intuitive. And I'm not saying Aquarius doesn't have access to those things, but the motivation and the energetics are really fundamentally different. And that happens every time they switch through an elemental change, right? That's why the zodiac progresses the way it is. There's a beautiful pattern in it all, but it is definitely, it feels like things are becoming concrete and we're manifesting physical change on the 3D. We're going from the mental portion, the intuitive portion, the spiritual portion, into driving that into what does this look like and what are we going to do about it and how do we make it happen?
And I love that too. It's like with Mars and Venus, with the masculine and the feminine, is like that is how we actually create is through the union of the masculine and the feminine in nature. That's what we see all the time, really, right? So it's like that is a very like 3D concept that you need to have that balance between the two and working through the blockages and the belief systems and everything that need to shift for that to happen is going to be an interesting month.
Totally. And I think that, those are the key, those are some of the key big astrological events that are going on. Like I said, you can always go down that rabbit hole of be like, this one's conjunct here and square here. And there's quite a few of those happening also. But these are the really big, I think, overarching themes. We've got, and also, I might as well mention it, but Mercury also enters Aries on March 10th. So Aries, like your mind is already starting to think in March 10th. And so at the beginning of March, while you're really still deep in that Piscean energy, your mind is already starting to kind of get ahead of you into like, what does this look like? How does this happen? And that can cause some frustration when you're working with Piscean energy because it is not grounded. It is like probably one of the least, if not the least, ungrounded sign that there is. So when you have your Mercury entering Aries, which is very driven, very steps and oriented around like goals and achievement and progression and those masculine things. And in our society, our minds really flourish in the masculine right now because we're set up to be praised for masculine pursuits these days. So it's really like kind of perpetuates that energy, and that can be in juxtaposition with the Piscean underlying smoother, consistent energy that's more across the board in our charts this time of year. So
maybe bring some patience until we get everything shifting into Aries.
Yeah. And it's, as much as I love me that Aries energy, patience is not their strong suit. We know this. We know this. So this is going to be a bit of a struggle. But that's also kind of the fun, gritty, evolutionary part of Aries is like they can struggle. Aries does struggle good, struggles hard. And it makes, you know, there's that fight, there's the fire. If you're gonna struggle mentally and mull something over, like Mercury and Aries is kind of that aspect, but a cautionary tone, especially because there's an eclipse going on in Libra, depending on where that is in your house. That's a lot of like relational dynamics. So having Mercury, which can rule over expression and communication, in Aries, which is a very fire, confrontation, content sign, can be a little explosive. Yeah, so heated arguments is totally possible when you're working with that eclipse south node eclipse in Libra, and you're working on letting some things go, things that no longer serve you. There might be some confrontation that comes to a head in those moments.
Yeah, that's fun. I feel like I'm just still trying to, in my personal journey, view confrontation as a non-charged, non-judgmental thing. It's just a natural part of being human, and we need to confront things. So yeah, it'll be an opportunity for me for sure.
Mm-hmm. The Aries archetype pulls in a lot of really interesting dynamics around that because, like I said, it rules the head, and it does deal with a lot of anger and a lot of fierce expression because it's ruled by Mars, right? It's that fiery. That is what it is. It's part of the archetype. It's part and parcel, right? And there's not necessarily morality behind it, but we talk about when we're feeling our emotions in our body, it can be very heady. When we are in rage or when we're in anger, that shows up in our minds. In our physical head, we're hot-headed. There's sayings about it. Oh, you're hot-headed, or they blew their top, or oh, I lost my head, I lost my cool. All of those expressions, which I love those sayings, to see how they tie back into like very real archetypal patterns here that are mirrored in astrology, and they're mirrored in body talk styles of work, and they're mirrored in fire associations in medicine, and all of those things. It's just like these archetypes are very universal when you can look at them in a broad symbolic sense.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, definitely. My mind goes to Chinese medicine, absolutely. You know, anger associated with the liver, and fire rises to the head, and yeah, it's you can see how that
even red in the face, right? Like, oh, I'm red in the face with anger, or I see red. Like it's all heady, and it's all that red, hot fire emotion in your head. And I mean, Aries is literally a ram. They hit shit with their head. Right? Meeting your problems head on, that's an Aries archetype, and that's a thing, right? I love these sayings because they make it so obvious. So clear.
Yeah, and it's also like that opposing sign is Libra too, so there's that tension we see between that the eclipse, right? So
yeah, totally.
Actually woven in there.
I'd love to chit chat about those gene keys because the gene keys provide really clear language, and it feels a bit more of like a masculine interpretation for me when it comes to the gene keys because it's got really clear structure and you can explore the words and the language a bit more. I know our first one that we experienced at the beginning of March is the 63rd gene key,
Yeah, so it starts with the 63rd, which is the shadow of doubt, the gift of inquiry, and of course the city, which is the highest expression of like this one gene key that we're looking at here is truth. So I think we see that still kind of within that Piscean kind of energy, I guess, that's kind of seeking of truth, that kind of bigger picture. And then, but yeah, it kind of like, moves deeper later in the month into dishonor, graciousness, and grace, which is a very big gene key. And we see that one being very also kind of ethereal. Like these are very like grace, so like the faded kind of feelings really, right? So we can kind of see that it's like being mirrored in the astrology too. And turbulence. So this is the one I think that I was thinking of the most when you were talking about, some of the more confrontational aspects I think that are coming up. So the shadow of turbulence comes in, but when we kind of look at the gene keys, it can be really nice because we get to see that every energy kind of you can look at it from multiple angles. And so when you're looking at it from the shadow of how it can be expressing from like the lower vibrational frequencies, first we can also see that as an opportunity that it also holds the vibration of the gift, and then of course the highest manifestation, which is another flavor of love. So you can kind of see how you can move in and out of this vibration of this one time that we're experiencing with this gene key. And so it goes turbulence, and then it goes into humanity, and then compassion as well. So there's kind of that like brings in that whole group energy, that like oneness, that unconditional love, which is actually the next gene key is universal love. That's the city, which is the shadow of constriction and the gift of acceptance. So it kind of, again, still seems, a bit more Piscean shifting into Aries kind of energy there as well too. Is just like in order to complete a cycle, we must first accept it. We can't move past anything we can't accept. We have to accept everything, and that's how we move through life. And so then coming into acceptance allows you to then finally have that ending and that completion and be able to move forward to create new in your life, which we can bring in that fire of Aries of, like hard work and really having to confront the old ways in order to forge the new. And that's where we get into the final gene key of the month, which will be, I have this one in my profile, is the shadow of opinion, the gift of farsightedness, and the city or the highest vibration is that of omniscience, so this all-seeing nature. And so being able to see the big picture in order to, finally create from the right place, really, right? So you can be in alignment with your higher self, with what is actually evolutionarily the best step for yourself and for all. I love the gene keys because they do kind of give us the option to really analyze the shadow, which we can all kind of be in, and look at the different flavors of being in the shadow and see the opportunities to shift within that space. The vibration that you would need to shift into to work with the higher vibrations, really, right? So,
yeah. I often view it as, so we talk about the 3 T's. So trust the triggers to teach. And I got to figure out who said that first because I feel bad not giving them credit, but that's not mine. Someone else said that. Trust the triggers to teach. And for me, I see a lot of the shadow frequency as the trigger. And then I feel like the path and the teaching would be the gift and the city. So like when I have that doubt show up at the beginning of March here, which is going to come in quite strong, when we sit in that unknown, a lot of us are really not good with that mutable liminal space, that Piscean type. Same with Uranus. Uranus is a big flavor of that first gene key, the doubt, inquiry, and then truth. You have to wade through the misty waters that is yourself in order to come and find that alignment, that internal sense of truth. And if you have not done that before, that is the definition of self-doubt and of confusion. And when I have that doubt, when I have that trigger, I can trust it to teach me the art and the gift of inquiry. And through inquiry, I can rest in the prize, quote unquote, or the city frequency that is the truth that I find, my truth, my alignment in that kind of dynamic. Same thing with dishonor, graciousness, and grace. If I see myself dishonoring other humans, especially if I'm really thinking about our collective society right now, if my actions are dishonorable, if I am not coming from a place of love, if it is out of alignment and I see that dishonor in myself, whether that's externally directed or I'm dishonoring my own self and my own truth and my own needs, the graciousness and almost has a flavor of forgiveness. Graciousness is very similar to acceptance for me and in my my understanding of this dynamic. And like you mentioned, the 22nd gene key, if you're new to the gene keys, the 22nd gene key is one of the biggest, most pivotal, energetic dynamic that is going on in our current timeline, world, planet dynamics. It's a big piece. Same, the 22nd and the 55th. So if you're just getting into, dip your toe there because it's very relevant, very helpful. But this really does tie into giving yourself that grace to realign with those North Node qualities that you're moving towards. Like Alana said, that's the fated energy. That's the, there might be a bigger plan for you and you're aligning to something that is beyond you. That's what I mean when I say you got to find yourself and align to it. What you are aligning to is the part of you that is connected into source, that is connected into God, that is connected into a higher realm, frequency, dimension, however you want to word it. There's a lot of different language around this, but the part I'm aligning to is that piece of God, is that light. And you have to let all of that stuff fall away so that you can be clear in that channel, right? That's the graciousness. And you're dishonoring that light when you live out of alignment from it. Mm-hmm. And I think the turbulence, the next gene key, I love the gene keys for this. This is like so, every time we do these forecasts, I'm like, oh my God, it works every time. Because if you look at the 36 gene key, the process of allowing who you think you are and what you think you're supposed to be and all of these dynamics, letting that fall away, that is turbulence. That ain't easy. And you can see that as within, so without. Getting to humanity, having the compassion to see the fact that every single individual is going through the exact same journey of getting in alignment with who they truly are and trying to unprogram themselves and unravel the convoluted conditioning and all of that junk that we collect along the way. Every person is going through some similar dynamic of this inward evolution, right? Involution, if you will. Mm-hmm. And to find that humanity and compassion for the collective journey and within yourself, because you can't do it for others if you can't do it for yourself. 36 gene key in a nutshell. And then 25 is like constriction. Even if you're doing that, you're not going to do it perfect every time. There's going to be limitations. People are going to react and respond in ways that are not great. You're like, oh, I'm doing this all with love. And they're still in a frequency that doesn't give two shits where you're coming from. You know, like there is limitations and external forces that might be working against your frequency. There is. And then maybe it's not even malicious in that regard. Maybe it's just, timeline restrictions or not yet. You have to wait. You have to whatever, right? So the acceptance of where you are, which is the gift frequency of constrictions, for me, especially because I have a lot of Saturn placements in my chart, if we're tying this back to astrology, constriction and Saturn says, no, not right now. You got to learn your lesson first. You got to learn the skills first. You got to sit in this teaching more. And that is where that gift frequency, the teaching of the trigger of constriction would be acceptance. And then once you are accepted, you can become that universal love state that there is no moral frequency in the denser vibrations. It's not bad. It's just what it is. It might be slower, it might be harder, but it doesn't make it negative or bad per se, right? So that universal acceptance in regards to the frequencies we're experiencing. And then good old 17. Good old 17. We're laughing because Alana and my mother actually have this gene key in their chart. So this has been something we mull over in our gene keys container quite often. Opinion, farsightedness, and omniscience. When you are coming out of that Piscean void of all that is possible, aligning with who you are within that mess, and then having to bring that to fruition with will and excitement and passion, which is all that Aries is. When Aries moves from a place of connection with that feminine force, when it's in service to its dream, when it is heart-centered and balanced in its approach of manifesting and creating, it is holding in mind the farsightedness of the overall plan. Who am I serving? What am I building this for? What am I pursuing for? And that calls in the farsightedness and the omniscience. And the trigger with that one is being opinion, I find really interesting, because we all have maybe had an experience where someone's really passionate about something and it rubs you the wrong way. And now people are tossing opinions around and you should do it this way. And if you're going to build that world, I think it should be this way. And Aries can have a lot of hot-headed opinions when they're really passionate because their way is going to be this and they know what they're doing and X, Y, and Z. That can be confronting for people, right? Opposing opinions, opposing ways to do a thing. That farsightedness is what really anchors them back into that feminine trait of that Piscean cosmic void.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, and you need to like, and with opinion is like, it's like we're seeing just very tunnel vision. We're seeing just from the one perspective. We're really like, we've limited our view. And so like to be able to like zoom out and be like, okay, like, well, what's the bigger view? What actually is better when we look at more than just this one point in time? But it's also very like highly associated with kind of like the mind and that masculine. So it'll be an interesting one to see as that pairs up with the astrology with the Aries there too. And yeah.
So I think if you don't know the gene keys, because I know it's not as popular as astrology per se, it's not as common to discuss the gene keys as it might be with astrology. My suggestion in a really broad sense is, first of all, get involved in them if you feel called to, because they're lovely. But second of all, view the shadow frequency as a call to respond from the gift frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Is that a good way to put that? Like, I'm like, oh no, I'm experiencing constriction. How can I work with the concept or the energetics or the idea of acceptance to almost counter out that polarity? It's like the shadow and the gift are the polarities, and then the city is the dimensional shift where polarities no longer exist.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good way of putting it. It's a magical journey for sure to start to explore them and to see, and yeah, it creates so many openings. It even gives me, I feel like, insight into how to label or like the language on how to actually communicate what my internal experience is. In the whole, it's 64 of them is the hexagram of the I Ching that he follows. And so like, there's like 64 different flavors of how to say I'm afraid or what's non-love. And then there's also 64 different flavors of the highest vibration of love and then the 64 gifts in between. So it's such a rich way to start to explore your inner world and understand and work within the framework. It's fun and it sounds very, like you said, masculine and heady kind of in a way, but it's also like, there's the art of contemplation, which he also talks about quite a bit in the work of the Gene Keys is it's that cross between the feminine and the masculine. And there's this play in between. It's mental work, but it's also playful work. It's a nice way to look at the world is what I found since working with them.
Makes me think of in therapy when they give you a list of feelings and they're like, oh, what are you feeling? And it's like that, but like 64 different words to, like exactly like you said, like what type of flavor of sadness am I experiencing or what flavor of fear? Which might sound silly, but it's really helpful when you're working on a vibrational frequency energetic level. Because I've talked about this before, like, for example, self-love doesn't have a vibration that I can identify within me. But you know what does? Like patience with myself. And patience is a type of self-love. It's a subtle vibration difference in that language we use, and our language is powerful. So it's a beautiful portal to wordsmithing, to be able to choose the right language that triggers the right frequency, that unleashes an energetic wave behind something.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So if we look at the tarot, when we did our year at a glance forecast for March, it's the Hermit. And I love this point in the forecast because it's always like, oh my gosh, it is the Hermit.
Gosh, right. Go connect to God, go align to higher self, source. Yeah.
Totally. So I do have it pulled out here so you guys can take a look at it. This is the Hermit card. Of course, we have, I think, common associations with the Hermit. because hermits are people who live alone in the forest, right? They are just in and of themselves. But something, especially with this monthly forecast and the energetics we have going on, the hermit, the piece I think that is important to call in and realize is that he is not under the influence of anybody else's judgments, projections, and thought processes, which is very hard. It's very hard to do that in our world because we have a bombardment of media and online opinions and thoughts constantly. But the hermit, he's isolated. And this speaks to especially the beginning of March and that discovery of destiny. He's holding his little light and he's looking right at it. It's a very internal journey. It has nothing to do with the world around him because he's not connected to the world around him. That's the definition of a hermit. Him in the bush, him alone, him a recluse. And that hermit's journey, he's got a walking stick for a reason. He is on a journey. It's just an internal one. Back to that very clear light, right? It's dark. There's nothing behind him. You can't see anything else. There's nothing else going on. The focus of the hermit is him in this card and his little light. Makes me think of that Bible song. This little light of mine, I'm going to shine. Yeah, we got that going on here. And I think you can see that in the astrology as well as the gene keys.
Yeah, absolutely. Almost like kind of an as without, so within kind of vibration with the omniscience and then the hermit, and kind of gives the two ends of the spectrum as well too. It's like in order to see the big picture, we must go within as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're not going to be able to show up and influence the world if you don't know who you are. I mean, to put it really bluntly, if you're going out there trying to and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't be involved and don't try and get out there and do things and learn and discover. That's all part of it as well. But you got to be centered, and this year is really calling people to figure out their truth. Who are you?
Yeah.
You're here to be you, right? Like, you need to discover who you are because that is your rock. That is your foundation. That is your core stability in the turbulence, in all of that self-doubt, all of those frequencies. They become a lot less life-altering. Eclipse season becomes a lot less life-altering when you have core stability, when you know who you are, when you trust your process and aligning to the light again and again and again. And I think we're really getting called to do that, and that's that hermit finding his light. Because
Love
from
that.
there, now you get to create. Now you get to be the light unto the world. It's another Bible reference.
Beautiful. I love it.
All right. At this point in our journey, we get to do a conscious card and a subconscious card. What one are we wanting to do first?
Let's do the subconscious card first. So kind of like the unseen elements we're going to be working with this month that might be supporting
and that
us.
I keep dropping cards. So the subconscious card, again, as we always say, as without, so within. So this is your subconscious influences, what might be showing up for you from the depths, the things that you might not be aware of, your internal dynamics, but also external. There might be one person in particular or a force outside of you in your life that is pulling in this subconscious, not aware of energy, right? Just like subtle things that are going on, a frequency that might be a consistent tone this month that is not clear for you.
What will it be?
I know. It's hard, like as always for me, not to view the subconscious card as like quote unquote negative. It's just
shadows.
We just don't see it. That's it. It's just we don't know about it. It's happening. Maybe it's from us, maybe it's from someone else, maybe it's from God himself, but it is a thing that's going on. Ooh, that's really interesting. So the subconscious card today for the month of March is the Knight of Swords upright.
Ooh, wow, that's a fighting one. Charging into battle.
Yeah, I think the first thing, obviously, that comes to mind would be movement. We've got a lot of movement. If you look at the swords, it's very much so the Libran air dynamic. Swords are the suit of air. It's the cognitive realm, it's our thoughts, it's our ideas, it's communication, it's the mental world there. And nights are moving real quickly. So you're very right. They're charging in. So I guess, how does that apply into our life? What are the subconscious ways things like ambition? Ambition can be represented by the Knight of Swords. That might be influencing you. Driven to success. The Knight, or he's not a king, he's the second most experienced suit card. So he is working towards something. Like, he's got goals. He's got to climb the proverbial ladder. It's very fast thinking. We could look at some restlessness, unfocusedness, maybe a bit impulsive, just wanting to go, right? Biting at the bit. Very much so.
It's almost like, also I could kind of see this, like if it's the subconscious kind of, also like really going in and weeding out all of our subconscious patterning that has kind of maybe been kept our reality the way that it is, the things that need to die, the things that need to fall away, being able to confront those in a battle, kind of in a sense, make quick shifts, because it's just a lot of shifting going on.
And I also, like you said too, I guess maybe a flip side to that would be being unaware, not realizing our mental patterns, and not realizing and having it be rooted in our subconscious that we have this full steam ahead energy, this I need to succeed, this I got to do it quickly, that there's a really perceived timeline here, and that level of pressure that we're applying in our life could subconsciously be very, very much so affecting your everyday choices and how you move in the world.
Absolutely. Interesting reflection.
Yeah. And I love tarot for that, because when I pull a card, it's like, ooh, there's like those unique subtleties, because that archetype, like we said, that archetype has good and bad, right? Like, it can show up different ways. It can show up multiple ways. Like, at the beginning of the month, our subconscious could just be like, ooh, I'm following these patterns and I'm not aware of them. And by the end of the month, after we go through a little sneaky eclipse, we're like, this is the pattern. I see you. You have been made conscious now.
Yeah. Now I get to do the work.
Yeah, it's like, okay, great. Now we are going to utilize our sword of discernment. Conscious card, which is the opposite of subconscious. These are things that you can overtly see. These are energetics that are going on in your life. Whether, again, that's within you. So these are energies that you are actively working with, good or bad, detrimental, helpful. Or this could be energetics that are being presented to you in your life, things that are calling you forward, friends or other people who are embodying this stuff. What we got? Ooh, and it's a reversal. I think we had a reversal last month too. It is the Eight of Swords reversed. And let's be honest, it doesn't look fun.
Putting it lightly, especially when it's upside down.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, okay, so that can go either way. So when this card is upright, again, so still, which seems on par, we're in the mental realm still, right? So it's still swords. We're still cognitively figuring things out. And I think that really speaks to the fact that if we are in that hermit energy, our mind is trying to make sense of that Piscean cosmic void. We got a lot of internal dynamics going on, and our mind can't sift and sort that very well. That's why it's the unknown. That's why it's mysterious. Like, it escapes our mind quite a bit. And it makes a lot of sense to me that we can see this struggle, especially because we're moving out of an air sign, which is Aquarius. Things are transitioning from Aquarius into Pisces, and our minds might be grasping a little bit. So the fact that swords are showing up so much speaks to a lot of that for me.
Yeah.
So if it was upright, we could be talking about really being stuck within our minds, right? She's blinded. It's a lady, right? Yeah, she's blinded. Her hands are bound. She can't really do anything. She has no idea where she is. She's literally encased in swords. She needs outside help. She needs some intervening, right? Whether it's from the outside or maybe it's from the inside. That would be if this card is upright. if you switch this card, we're talking about freedom. We're talking about being untethered from old patterns per se, old habits, and then allowing ourselves to be a bit more open to possibilities, to the unknown, to the mystery. So I think we're going to have to be dancing between this and this in our minds a lot in March. And I personally can really feel this energy coming up, because when you identify a pattern, a subconscious pattern that might be moving, it's not like the work is now done there. You now have to wrestle with being stuck in that pattern and being free from that pattern and figuring that pattern out and just puzzling it over and sticking in it and being acceptant of it and then letting it go and then seeing if it changes. And it's a lot of this open-minded, closed-minded. That polarity is going to be happening.
Yeah, I feel like I've already been kind of seeing more of that within myself in my life thus far. So that's interesting that it's going to be continuing for March. That makes sense with all of the astrology and the gene keys and now the tarot. So
yes. I also want to talk about a little bit of the fact that while this is very mental, what this can really feel like is a sense of powerlessness. An inability to affect change outside of you, being stuck in your mind, hopeless, powerlessness. What can I do to change this whole vast world, right? Because we've got to keep in mind here that we've got that Aquarius influence still coming into the month of March, and it is, how do I affect the world outside of me? And then we have Pisces season, and then Pisces seasons gives way to Aries. And it's a little bit of like, I recognize all of the issues that are going on with humanity, within our community, within our society, all of the wars, the genocides, the conflict. There is some big problems that we are being called to address and face. Big ones. And then we dissolve into the cosmic void, and that doesn't feel practical. You know, it doesn't feel like, how does floating around in idealism and uncertainty and all of these cognitive, spiritual, and emotional experiments, figuring it out, sifting and sorting through that internal alignment, how does all of that move into Aries season and actually affect practical change? So it's like Aquarius, these are X, Y, and Z. This is what's wrong. I've done an evaluation. I've got a pretty clear idea. These are sifting and sorting, clear mental realm. Then we move into the emotional. What are we calling in? What's going on? That watery, mutable flow of, who do I need to be? What do I look like in this? And that can feel really disempowering when you don't know. If you don't have that answer, how do I do this? And then we have to trust that that shift will occur when we move into that Aries season and how we can become effective in the world around us.
So cool. Very revolutionary or evolutionary, like you said at the beginning.
Yeah, March is a lot. March starts a lot this year. But I think we can almost say that about every month so far. It's like, oh, there's a lot going on. 24 is a lot. 2024 is a lot.
Yeah.
We're in it. And it's funny because I feel like a lot of people in quote unquote spiritual communities are like, oh, you've been born to the world this time. You signed up to be here at this time. And there's a meme that's circulating right now with Shia LaBeouf, and I'm in love with it. It's hilarious. It's like an audio on TikTok. And it's like, this is it. You asked for it. You're in it. This is what this is. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is the journey right now for everybody. You asked for it. This is it. We're doing the thing. We're going to revolutionize the world. Yeah, we got to do X, Y, and Z. It's hard. And like, you can say it like this and giggle, and I have to laugh about it. Alana and I have this conversation all the time. I got to laugh about it. Because when I am not laughing, it is fetal position terror invoking. I get it. Like, that's the human side of this coin too. This is terrifying. This is hard. Oh, yeah. This is not easy. This, like, oh, yeah, let's just go traverse the insides of our entire whole essence of self. Like, that sounds cute. Great. But what does that look like? That means undoing patterns that you have identified with as who you are, an intrinsic part of your being for maybe the last 15 years of your life, last 20 years of your life. You're like, it's letting who you think you are die again and again and again. It's hard.
Yeah, it's intense for sure. And the need, the desire to check out, the desire to be distracted, the desire to be numb, to not have to feel those feelings. A lot of that is not even within our control in the way that these patterns are interwoven into our lives and our beings. And so, yeah, I could see it, that turbulence, like that emotional turbulence with all of that coming to the surface. And to be overwhelming to have to self-analyze that much and look at it all and then ideally take responsibility for what we've created.
And to feel it, because we so have that tendency to want to figure it all out, right? And the astrology is really pushing us in that direction right now. It's like, oh, that mental realm, all of these swords, all of these cognitive process. But then the entire Pisces archetype, Pisces season, planets like Venus and Mars, the new moon in Pisces, you will feel powerless because there is nothing to do in that frequency but to feel it. You are not led by your mind when you are in Pisces. You aren't led. You ain't going anywhere. Pisces is non-directional. It's mutable. It's like moving around with the tides or in like a swirling bubbly bath. Like you're not driven. You don't have direction right now. You're just sitting with it. You are sitting in that void. This is really being stuck in the being frequency,
I love that. For those who don't know, with the gene keys, Melanie and I are in a container right now, and the sphere that we're going to be contemplating is actually the emotional sphere this month. So I'm just kind of interested to see how that doubles down.
I didn't think about that. I'm not excited. I have a lot of very powerful mental dynamics in my birth chart, in my gene key chart, and everything the reason I have so many thoughts and opinions about feeling disempowered and stuck in that Piscean void is because it's not thrivey. I'm not thrivey in that frequency.
Well, I think if it's going to be emotionally tumultuous, definitely have your people that can hold space for you during this time. And at least with the gene keys, we get to do that for each other as well within our little container that we've created. So,
and it just came to my mind as like a joke, but now that I think about it, it's a legit option. Take a nap. And I'm like, oh, haha, cute and funny. Like, oh yeah, just sleep it off. We're all sad and overwhelmed. Go have a power nap and we'll figure it out after. Yes, very yes to that. But also, Pisces is about dreams. Pisces is about communicating with those other realms, your higher self. So soften into that. If you need to sleep, start a dream journal. Get your pendulum out. Do your tarot. Surrender to external guidance and don't necessarily act on it. Kind of view this as like a collection period of like feeling things out and letting things come to you. So like sleep on it. Take a nap.
I love that. No, that's good advice.
On
all fronts.
All right. Yeah. How are you feeling? Are you complete in this energetic forecast?
Yeah, no, I think that is a interesting array of intuitive hits and studies of the different modalities. So best of luck to everybody. Lots of love. I hope that everyone navigates this with ease and compassion and grace and with some of those higher frequencies that we talked about. But yeah, we're all in it.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Okay, everybody, good luck. Bye.
Bye.
See you in April. All right. As always, thank you for being here with us. We do truly hope that this is of service to you. It's very fun and exciting for us to unpack all of these things. And I know for me, this has been of great service, just sitting down and having this conversation with you all. So we will see you back for another forecast for the month to come. In the meantime, check out the Sacred Seat podcast. All of the links to all of the goodness is below. We did just release a free ceremony preparation course, so that's fun if you're looking for more information, more conversations, more universe expanding discussions. That will be linked in the description below as well. All of the love, best of luck, and we'll see you again shortly.